Welcome to Easy English, your go-to channel for improving your English and life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Easy English, the channel where we help you learn English and change your life. Today's episode's about something very important, how to control your mind and emotions. Now, this isn't about, shutting down what you feel. It's more about really understanding and guiding those feelings. So they lead to, better outcomes, right? In your decisions, your connections with others, and just your overall well-being.
Exactly. Yeah, we're definitely not aiming for some kind of emotionless state here. It's more about developing a really keen awareness of how our minds and emotions actually operate, and then learning to manage them effectively so they, empower us rather than holding us back.
Okay, that sounds absolutely crucial. But where does someone even begin? How do you start taking charge of something that often feels so automatic?
Well, the very first step really is cultivating self-awareness. When an emotion pops up, just pause for a second. Ask yourself a few key questions, like, what am I actually feeling right now? Why might I be feeling this way? And maybe the most important one, is my reaction right now actually helping? Or is it, potentially making things worse?
That's a powerful set of questions. I can definitely think of times when my immediate gut reaction just amplified the whole problem.
Well, absolutely. Many people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And there's actually research showing that simply labeling an emotion objectively can reduce its intensity.
Really? Just naming it.
Yeah, it creates a little bit of mental distance. It's also useful to understand that our minds, they work on different levels. You've got your conscious, rational mind, the part that thinks things through. And then there's the subconscious, that's where habits and those automatic emotional reactions live.
So gaining mastery means kind of bridging that gap, bringing those subconscious reactions up into our conscious awareness.
Precisely. That's the goal. Now, when we talk about emotions, it's important to get what they are. They have a physiological side. Think about how your body feels when you're stressed, right? Heart racing, maybe tension.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the psychological aspect, too, shaped by our biology, sure, but also our past experiences, our thoughts, how we see things. Ultimately, you can think of emotions as messengers. They're carrying valuable information.
Messengers, not commanders. I like that. That's a useful distinction. So, okay, why put in the effort? Why is gaining this control so important? What are the actual real-world benefits?
Oh, the advantages are huge. Far-reaching, really. For starters, much better decision-making. When you're not being totally swayed by intense feelings, your thinking just becomes clearer, more logical.
Makes sense. Less emotional reaction, more rational thought.
Exactly. And then there are significant health benefits. Managing stress, managing those negative emotions. It's linked to better sleep, a stronger immune system, things like that.
Wow, okay. Physical health, too.
Definitely. And relationships usually improve quite a bit because you're less likely to just react impulsively, right? And you become more capable of empathy, understanding where others are coming from. And maybe most fundamentally, it just cultivates a greater sense of inner calm, inner peace, really. Satisfaction.
Okay, you've convinced me on the why. That all sounds incredibly valuable. So let's get into the practical stuff. The how. What are some concrete techniques we can actually use when those strong emotions start bubbling up?
Right. Let's start with something really fundamental. The connection between our body and our mind. It's incredibly strong. When you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, even just a simple shift in your breathing can have a really significant impact. You could try the 4-4-6-8 technique. It's simple. You inhale slowly, deeply for a count of 4, hold your breath gently for 4, and then exhale slowly, really slowly for a count of maybe 6 up to 8.
In 4, hold 4 at 6 to 8.
Okay. Yeah. And what that does is it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest system. It basically signals safety to your brain, which helps counteract the fight or flight stress response, reduces stress and anxiety right then and there.
That's amazing. And it's something anyone can do, literally anywhere, anytime. What other sort of body-based practices are helpful?
Mindfulness is another incredibly valuable one. You hear that word a lot these days.
Yeah, mindfulness seems to be everywhere. What does it actually mean in this context?
Well, at its core, mindfulness is simply paying attention to the present moment on purpose, and crucially, without judgment. So it allows you to observe your emotions as they arise, notice them without immediately getting swept away by the story or the reaction.
Okay, observing without getting carried away. How do you practice that day to day?
You can bring it into almost anything. Mindful eating, really focusing on the taste, the texture, the smell of your food. Mindful walking, noticing the sensation of your feet on the ground, the air on your skin. Even mindful communication, giving your full, non-judgmental attention when someone else is speaking, it's about being fully present.
So it's really about engagement with the now. Okay. What about when it's our thoughts themselves that are stirring up the emotional storm?
Yes. That's where thought management comes in. This is a big one. Often, our emotional reactions aren't triggered directly by an event, but by our interpretation of that event. And sometimes, let's be honest, our interpretations are a bit distorted.
Distorted how?
Well, we might fall into unhelpful thinking patterns, like jumping to the worst possible conclusion, or personalizing things, assuming something is about us when it really isn't, or that all or nothing thinking. Seeing things in stark black and white, no gray areas.
I definitely recognize that black and white thinking sometimes. Guilty is charged.
We all do it. The first step is just to start questioning those automatic thoughts when they pop up. Ask yourself, okay, is this thought actually based on solid evidence? Or is it more of an assumption?
Am I maybe blowing this out of proportion?
Exactly. Am I overreacting here? Or a really good one, what would I tell a friend if they came to me with this exact same thought?
That's clever. Taking an outside perspective.
Right. Because just examining those irrational thoughts, holding them up to the light, it starts to diminish their power over your emotions.
It's like becoming a bit of a detective for your own mind, isn't it? Investigating those thoughts.
Precisely. A thought detective. I like that. And from that questioning, you can move towards something called cognitive restructuring. It sounds technical, but it's straightforward. You catch those automatic negative thoughts, the I'm going to fail or everyone dislikes me kind of thoughts.
Okay, catch them. Then what?
Then you challenge their validity. Ask, is this really true? What's the actual evidence? What's the worst that could realistically happen here? And then the key step, you actively replace them with more balanced, more realistic alternatives. So instead of, I'm bound to fail, maybe reframe it as, okay, I've prepared as best I can, and I'm going to give it my best shot.
That shift seems subtle, but really powerful, changing the internal narrative.
It absolutely is. Another related technique is creating mental distance. When you're right in the thick of a highly emotional situation, clear thinking is, well, it's difficult.
Understatement of the year.
Right, so try this. Imagine the whole scenario is happening to someone else, maybe a friend. What advice would you give them? Or try projecting forward. How important will this feel in a week, a month, a year from now?
The time perspective trick. Yeah, that usually shrinks problems down pretty fast.
It really does. It helps calm that immediate, intense emotional reaction because you're seeing the bigger picture. It's like taking a mental step back.
Okay, stepping back for a wider view. Makes sense. What about deeper beliefs? The ones that maybe run underneath these automatic thoughts.
That's a crucial layer. We all have underlying beliefs about ourselves and the world. And sometimes we hold on to limiting beliefs. Things like, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be happy, or things never work out for me. These can really trap us in negative emotional cycles.
And how do you tackle those? They seem so ingrained.
They can be. Techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, are really helpful here. CBT provides tools to first identify these core limiting beliefs. Then you systematically examine the evidence, what supports this belief, what contradicts it. And then, just like with automatic thoughts, you work on consciously replacing them with more empowering, more realistic beliefs.
Right.
It takes practice, but it's very possible.
So we've covered breathing, mindfulness, managing thoughts, changing beliefs. What about more direct mental training like meditation?
Yes, meditation and mindfulness practices are cornerstones for cultivating emotional regulation. They train the mind directly. Even simple breath awareness meditation, just gently focusing your attention on the physical sensation of your breath coming in and going out, can be incredibly grounding when you feel scattered.
Just focusing on the breath.
Yeah. Or loving kindness meditation. This involves intentionally generating feelings of warmth, kindness, and compassion, first for yourself, then for loved ones, neutral people, even difficult people. It can really shift your emotional state positively.
Generating compassion. Interesting.
And body scan meditations are great too. You systematically bring your awareness to different parts of your body, noticing any sensations, warmth, coolness, tension, tingling without judging them. This helps you connect with your body and release physical tension, which is often tied to emotions.
There seem to be many types. Does it matter which one you do?
The most important thing is finding one that resonates with you and then being consistent. Even just a few minutes each day makes a huge difference over time. Consistency trumps duration, especially when you're starting out.
Right. Short and regular beats long and infrequent. Got it.
Absolutely. Visualization is another potent mental tool.
Like daydreaming?
Sort of, but more directed. You can mentally picture yourself successfully navigating a difficult situation, or imagine yourself feeling completely calm and centered in a place you find peaceful. You can even mentally rehearse how you want to respond in an upcoming challenging conversation. This kind of mental rehearsal conditions your mind, makes it more likely you'll respond that way in reality.
So it's like proactive mental preparation,
Yeah.
preparing your mind for challenges.
Exactly. And then there are mantras and affirmations. This is the practice of repeating positive phrases to yourself.
Like positive self-talk.
Pretty much. Simple phrases like, I am calm, capable, and in control. Or, I choose to respond with clarity, not reactivity. Repeating these can genuinely help reshape your habitual inner dialogue over time.
It's like consciously writing a new script for your self-talk.
In a way, yes. And remember we talked about naming emotions?
Yeah, just saying, I feel anxious.
Right. That very simple act, just verbally labeling the emotion you're experiencing, okay, I'm feeling frustrated right now, can actually lessen its grip. It activates the prefrontal cortex, the more rational part of your brain.
Fascinating how just naming it helps.
It is. And we mentioned breathing earlier with the 4-4-6-8. Another really effective one, especially for immediate calming, is the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale quietly through your nose for 4 counts, hold your breath for a count of 7, and then exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound for 8 counts.
In 4, hold 7, out 8 with a whoosh.
That's it. Doing just a few rounds of that can have a remarkably quick calming effect on the nervous system.
Okay, wow. So many useful tools in this kit. Anything else for when emotions feel really intense, almost overwhelming?
One more mindset shift that can be very helpful is cultivating an observer perspective. So instead of identifying with the emotion saying, I am angry, try framing it as, there is anger present within me right now, or I am noticing feelings of anger.
Creating that separation. I'm not the anger, I am the one noticing it.
Exactly. That slight distance reminds you that your feelings are temporary states passing through you. They don't define the entirety of who you are. And finally, there's something called emotional substitution. This is about intentionally shifting your focus when you feel a difficult emotion starting to rise.
Shifting focus. How?
So, for example, if you notice anger bubbling up, you might try to consciously shift your focus towards curiosity. Okay, what actually triggered this feeling? What's underneath it? Or if you feel a pang of envy or jealousy, maybe try to redirect that energy towards finding inspiration in what the other person has achieved. It's about consciously choosing a different emotional lens.
These are all such practical, actionable steps, things people can actually start doing today. Now, you touched on the science behind this earlier. Can you expand a bit? What's happening in our brains?
Certainly. It's really fascinating. There are key players in the brain, like the amygdala, often called the brain's fear center. It processes emotions like fear and anxiety very quickly. And then there's the prefrontal cortex, right behind your forehead. This is the more evolved part, responsible for things like planning, decision-making, and importantly, regulating those emotional responses from the amygdala.
So the amygdala reacts, and the prefrontal cortex tries to manage it.
In simple terms, yes. When we experience strong emotions, the amygdala can get highly activated, sometimes hijacking our rational thought. But practices like mindfulness, meditation, and cognitive restructuring actually help strengthen the connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. This allows for more effective top-down regulation. Your prefrontal cortex gets better at saying, okay, amygdala, I see you're upset, but let's take a breath and think this through.
And this can physically change the brain.
Yes. That's the amazing part, neuroplasticity. Our brains aren't fixed. They can reorganize themselves, form new neural connections based on our experiences and practices. So consistently practicing these emotional regulation techniques can literally rewire your brain over time, making you naturally more resilient and better equipped to handle emotional challenges.
It's like building up the muscle of that emotional control center in our brain. That's really encouraging. So given all this, how do we start to understand our own personal emotional landscape? Our habitual patterns?
That brings us right back to where we started, self-awareness. You really need to become a keen observer of yourself. Notice how you typically react emotionally in different kinds of situations. What are your common triggers, things that consistently set you off? What emotional responses do you tend to fall back on?
So paying attention to patterns.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping a journal can be incredibly helpful for this. Just jotting down situations, your feelings, your thoughts, your reactions. Over time, patterns emerge. It's also useful to be aware of common cognitive biases, these mental shortcuts our brains take that aren't always accurate. Like confirmation bias, we tend to look for information that confirms what we already believe. Or the negativity bias, we often give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones.
Right, recognizing those biases can help us understand why we might react a certain way.
Precisely. Knowing about them gives you insight. And there are also various self-assessment tools out there, questionnaires, even some personality insights that might offer clues about your emotional tendencies, though use those with discernment.
So it's really about mapping out your own internal emotional world. What about external factors? How much do our daily habits like sleep, diet, exercise play a role?
Oh, a huge role. Our lifestyle choices provide the foundation for our emotional regulation capacity. Think about sleep. When you're sleep deprived, your emotional reactivity goes way up. Everything feels more intense, harder to handle. Aiming for that sweet spot of 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is crucial.
And having a wind-down routine helps with that.
Absolutely. Dimming lights, putting screens away, maybe reading or some light stretching, signaling to your body it's time to rest. Then there's exercise. Physical activity is fantastic for emotional health. It helps reduce stress hormones like cortisol and releases mood-boosting chemicals like endorphins.
Any specific type of exercise?
Both aerobic exercise, running, swimming, dancing, and strength training have shown benefits. And mind-body exercises like yoga or tai chi are particularly good for integrating physical and mental well-being. And of course, diet. What you eat really impacts your brain function and emotional stability. A balanced diet rich in nutrients supports your mood. Try to limit excessive sugar, processed foods, unhealthy fats. They can contribute to mood swings.
So basic physical self-care is actually fundamental emotional self-care.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And don't forget journaling, which we mentioned for patterns. The simple act of writing down thoughts and feelings can be incredibly cathartic, releasing tension and providing clarity.
It all seems interconnected. Body, mind, habits.
It truly is. And we haven't even touched much on social connections yet. Strong, supportive relationships are vital. Having people you can talk to who offer support and perspective, that's a huge buffer against stress. Feeling a sense of belonging is key. So making time for loved ones, engaging in community, it matters.
Connection is important. What about disconnection? Like from technology?
Ah, yes, the digital detox idea. Taking regular breaks from screens, from the constant influx of information and comparison, it can significantly reduce stress and improve focus. Maybe having device-free times or zones in your home. Setting boundaries is healthy.
Boundaries with tech. Good point. And breathing again.
Always back to the breath. As we've discussed, consciously using your breath, like that 4-7-8 technique in stressful moments, or just taking a few deep breaths throughout the day, is a powerful, readily available tool for calming the mind and body. Making it a daily practice really builds resilience.
It really sounds like building emotional control is a holistic process involving our mind, body, and daily life choices. Now, I know different philosophies also have perspectives on this. Could you touch on that briefly?
Yes, absolutely. Different wisdom traditions offer really valuable insights. Stoicism, for example, the ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, its core tenets include focusing intensely on what you can control, primarily your own thoughts, judgments, and actions, and practicing acceptance for what you cannot control. The Stoics believed reason should be our master, guiding our emotional responses.
Control what you can, accept what you can't. Use reason.
Essentially, yes. There's a famous quote from Seneca. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. It speaks to managing our interpretations. Then you have perspectives from Buddhism, which suggests that much of our emotional suffering stems from attachment, clinging to things we want, resisting things we don't, and from craving. Practices like mindfulness, which we discussed, and cultivating non-attachment are seen as paths to inner peace. A key insight here is recognizing the impermanent nature of all things, including our emotions. They arise, they stay for a while, and they pass.
So understanding that feelings aren't permanent fixtures, they flow.
Exactly. That realization itself can reduce their power.
These philosophical views add another layer of understanding. But what if someone tries these techniques, understands the philosophy, but still feels overwhelmed? When is it time to seek more support?
That's a really important point. These tools and perspectives are powerful, but sometimes we need more. Recognizing when you need help is actually a sign of strength and self-awareness, not weakness. Sometimes just spending time around people who model calm, reasoned behavior can be helpful. Emotional regulation can be contagious in a good way.
Learning by example.
Right. And continuing to practice acceptance for the things genuinely outside your control is always crucial. But if you're consistently struggling, if strong emotions are significantly impacting your life, your work, your relationships, Professional help is often the next best step.
And what might that look like? What kind of professional support is available?
There are several very effective therapeutic approaches. We mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, earlier. It's excellent for identifying and restructuring those negative thought patterns that fuel emotional distress. Then there's dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. DBT is particularly helpful for people who experience very intense emotional swings, maybe struggle with impulsive or self-destructive behaviors.
How does DBT work?
DBT specifically teaches skills in 4 key areas: mindfulness, distress tolerance, getting through crises without making things worse, emotion regulation, understanding and changing emotions, and interpersonal effectiveness, managing relationships healthily.
So very practical skills training.
Very practical. Both CBT and DBT, often delivered by trained therapists, can provide invaluable tools, strategies, and support for developing much greater emotional control and well-being.
This has been incredibly insightful, thank you. It really feels like we've covered a comprehensive roadmap now, from understanding our inner world to practical techniques and even when to seek help.
It's definitely a journey, isn't it? It's not like you reach a destination called master emotions and you're done. There will be good days and there will be moments where you slip back into old patterns. That's normal, that's human. But every single time you manage to pause, to reflect just for a second, to take that conscious breath, to choose a slightly more thoughtful response instead of just reacting, that's progress. That's a step forward on the path.
So the key takeaway is perhaps remembering that fundamental distinction. You are not your thoughts or your emotions. You are the one who observes them. And crucially, you are the one who gets to choose how to respond.
Precisely. That awareness, that space between stimulus and response, that's where your power lies.
Thank you for joining us. If you learned something new from this discussion, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And here's something to think about. Consider one small emotional trigger you experienced recently. How could you apply just one of the techniques we talked about today to respond differently next time?